the walls were no protection at all. The wind kind of blew over and on top of the tents, and all the tents got flattened, and the fly sheets got torn, and poles got broken. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, we packed up and went on our way, a sort of sorry, bedraggled group, back down to the valley. And years later, I think it must have been 1992, I went with a chap called Eric Madden, who's a professional storyteller, but he also is a firm believer in rites of passage for youngsters, something that's going to be really quite physically demanding of them as a sort of step leading from childhood into manhood. And he said, what can we do that would be a rite of passage for a group of youngsters from Ysgol Dyffryn Conwy? And so I said, well, what about a crossing of the Carneddau from Aber over to Dolgarrog and down to the cliffs overlooking Cwm Dillyn? That would be a good adventure, because there's a big ledge in the heart of the cliffs. You can scramble along to get into it. We got up onto the tops and we walked into darkness, and we didn't need torches initially because you can develop your night vision as you go. And then quite suddenly it started to snow. This hadn't been forecast, and it wasn't part of the plan at all. Nobody knew where we were going except me. And I knew that there was a little emergency refuge on top of Oil Grach. So everybody was walking through the snow, getting more and more silent and glum. And then suddenly this little shelter appears out of the gloom, and we all got inside. And Eric told a story about Finn McCool and two of his warriors were traveling over a dark moor at night, and they suddenly saw a little light, and they went in. And the story was about an old man and a beautiful maiden in there and a goat. And the maiden couldn't tie up this goat so that they could milk it. And she asked the warriors to help her, and one after another they tried and failed. And then even Finn McCool, who was the strongest, greatest hero in all of Ireland, wasn't able to do it. Whereupon the old man sort of walked over and said, "Here, let me do it," and did it with no problem at all. It was an allegory, because the old man was deaf, and youth is behind you and you can't tame time. And the kids had recovered a bit. I realized that we weren't going to get into the cliffs of Cwm Dillyn at all. Instead, we went round the other side of the Cwm and slithered our way down a very steep slope in the dark with the snow falling heavily, and eventually made our way all the way down to the bothy in Cwm Dillyn itself, where we were able to get out our sleeping bags and spend a reasonable night. And then in the morning, we went on down the valley, and previously I'd deposited sausages and bacon and a frying pan and some kindling in a secret little wooded spot that I knew about. And we had a sort of fry-up breakfast there before going on to Coed Reservoir, where we were picked up.